Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, techgitter. In our last video, we covered the basics of IRS Form 1040. If you missed that, make sure to check it out. In today's video, we're going to walk you through the complete process of filling out IRS Form 1040. Whether you're filing your taxes for the first time or just need a refresher, we've got you covered. So, let's go ahead and get started. If you are a U.S. citizen or resident alien and you meet the income limits set by the IRS, you must file Form 1040. It is required to report income such as wages, dividends, and any other taxable income. Filing it ensures that you are compliant with the IRS, and it allows you to claim any tax benefits, such as deductions or credits, that may reduce your tax liability. Let's take a closer look at the main sections of Form 1040. You're absolutely right. Step 1 is all about entering your personal information. Let's break it down further. Personal information, top of the form. Your name, enter your full legal name on line 1. If you're married and filing jointly, list both your name and your spouse's name. Social Security number, SSN, enter your SSN in the appropriate box next to your name. If filing jointly, also enter your spouse's SSN. Address, fill in your current home address, street, city, state, and zip code. Make sure it's the address where the IRS can reach you if they need to. Filing status. You need to select your filing status based on your situation. The options are single, for unmarried individuals or those legally separated from their spouse. Married, filing jointly, if you're married and both of you agree to file together. This typically gives you the most favorable tax rates and potential deductions/credits. Married, filing separately. If you're married but choose to file separately, this may be beneficial in certain situations, such as when one spouse has large medical expenses or the other has a significant amount of debt. Head of household. This is for unmarried individuals who have a dependent and meet certain requirements, e.g., you paid more than half of the household expenses and lived with your dependent for more than half the year. Qualifying surviving spouse, also known as widow/widower. If your spouse passed away in the last 2 years and you have a dependent child, you may qualify for this status, which allows you to use the same tax rates as married filing jointly. Non-resident alien or dual status. This applies if you're a non-resident alien or have special circumstances involving dual status taxation, e.g., you were a resident for part of the year and a non-resident for the rest. You're getting into some specific sections that ask about digital assets, dependents, and other factors. Let's break it down. Digital assets. This section is about digital assets, cryptocurrency, NFTs, etc., and whether you had any transactions involving. Yes, if you received, sold, exchanged, or disposed of digital assets. Checked yes. You will likely need to complete Schedule 1, additional income and adjustments to income, and possibly other forms depending on the nature of the transaction, like Schedule D for capital gains. No, if you didn't do anything related to digital assets. Checked no. Standard deduction. This section asks about potential reductions in your taxable income due to your personal situation. Someone can claim you or your spouse as a dependent. If you are a dependent of someone else, for example, if you're a college student and your parents claim you, it affects your standard deduction. Spouse itemizes on a separate return or you were a dual status alien. If your spouse is filing separately and itemizing deductions, instead of taking the standard deduction, this can limit your ability to claim the standard deduction. Also, if you were a dual status alien, the deduction could be different. If you or your spouse is claimed as a dependent on someone else's return, it may affect the amount of the standard deduction. Age/blindness. If you or your spouse are over 65 or blind, you are eligible for an additional deduction to reduce your taxable income. If you were born before January 2, 1960, or are blind, you qualify for an additional deduction. Spouse. If your spouse was born before January 2, 1960, or is blind, they qualify for an additional deduction. The extra deduction depends on whether you or your spouse meet these criteria. If either of you does, check the box accordingly. Dependents. Claiming dependents. This part asks if someone can claim you or your spouse as a dependent. If you are a dependent, it affects the standard deduction as mentioned earlier. More than 4 dependents. If you are claiming more than 4 dependents, follow the instructions on the form to add extra dependents and include them in the correct section. Each dependent listed will need their name, social security number, and relationship to you. Additionally, if you're claiming a dependent, you'll need to check boxes to see if they qualify for credits like the child tax credit or other dependent credit. It looks like you're working through a section of the tax form, possibly the 1040 form, which includes reporting income and adjustments. Here's a breakdown of some key sections from the text you've shared. Income reporting. Lines 1A through 1H. These lines involve reporting wages from W-2 forms, household employee wages, tip income, Medicaid waiver payments, and other earned income. The total of these amounts gets added on line 1Z. Interest, dividends, and retirement income. Line 2A and 2B. Report tax-exempt and taxable interest means to report the interest income you earned in a given year on your tax return. There are 2 types of interest, tax-exempt and taxable. Line 3A and 3B, report qualified and ordinary dividends, refers to reporting the income you receive from dividends during the year. Dividends are payments made by corporations or mutual funds to their shareholders from profits. Line 4A and 4B, IRA distributions refer to the money you withdraw from your individual retirement account, IRA, and the taxable portion refers to the amount of the distribution that is subject to tax. Line 5A and 5B. Pensions and annuities are types of retirement income that are typically paid to you in regular installments after you retire. The taxable amount of these distributions is the portion of the pension or annuity payments that is subject to federal income tax. Line 6A and 6B. Social Security benefits are payments made to eligible individuals, primarily retired workers, and their dependents or survivors. While Social Security benefits are often thought of as tax-free, a portion of them can be taxable depending on your total income for the year. Capital gains, additional income. Line 7. It refers to the profit or loss from the sale of an asset, such as stocks, bonds, real estate, or other investments. Line 8. Schedule 1, line 10 of the tax return is where you report additional income that doesn't fit into the categories reported directly on Form 1040, like wages, interest, dividends, etc. It includes a variety of income sources that must be reported separately. Adjustments and taxable income. Line 10. Adjustments to income are specific deductions that reduce your gross income to arrive at your adjusted gross income, AGI. These adjustments are reported on Schedule 1. Line 11. Your adjusted gross income, AGI, is an important number on your tax return because it represents your total income after applying certain adjustments. Deductions. Line 12. You'll choose between taking the standard deduction or itemizing deductions from Schedule A. Line 13. The Qualified Business Income, QBI, deduction is a special tax break for owners of certain businesses, like sole proprietors, partnerships, S-corporations, and some trusts and estates. Line 14. This line adds the standard /itemized deductions and any business income deductions. Taxable income. Line 15. Subtract line 14 from line 11 to arrive at your taxable income. It's crucial to carefully check each form and line, especially if you're including various sources of income like retirement distributions, interest, or capital gains. Line 16. This is where you enter your total tax amount, which may come from various forms like Form 8814, Parents' Election to Report Child's Interest and Dividends, Form 4972, Tax on Lump Sum Distributions, or others. Line 17. This is the amount from Schedule 2, Line 3, which includes additional taxes such as the Alternative Minimum Tax, AMT, or other taxes. Line 18. Add lines 16 and 17 together to get your total tax before credits and other adjustments. Line 19. This line refers to the child tax credit or the credit for other dependents from Schedule 8812. These credits reduce your total tax liability. Line 20. The amount from Schedule 3, Line 8, which might include other credits like the American Opportunity Credit or the Lifetime Learning Credit. Line 21. Add the amounts from lines 19 and 20, which will give you the total credits you're eligible for. Line 22. Subtract line 21, total credits, from line 18, total tax before credits. If the result is 0 or less, enter tired face on this line. This represents your tax after applying the credits. Line 23, this is where you add any other taxes you owe, such as self-employment tax or additional taxes from Schedule 2, line 21. Line 24, the final step is to add lines 22 and 23, which gives you your total tax liability after all credits and adjustments. Line 25A, federal income tax withheld from your Form W-2S, your employer-provided wage income. Line 25B, federal income tax withheld from your Form 1099-S. For other income, like independent contractor work, interest, or dividends. Line 25C, federal income tax withheld from any other forms, could include forms like Form 1098-T for tuition, etc. Line 25D, this is the total of the amounts from lines 25A through 25C. This is your total federal income tax withholding from all sources. Line 26, the total of any estimated tax payments you made during the year, along with any amount you applied from your 2024 tax return. If you paid quarterly estimated taxes, you would include those here. Line 27, the Earned Income Credit, EIC, which is a refundable credit for taxpayers with low to moderate income who meet specific requirements, including having earned income from employment or self-employment. Line 28. This is the additional child tax credit from Schedule 8812, which is a refundable credit for eligible taxpayers who have children under the age of 17. Line 29. The American Opportunity Credit, which is a credit for qualified education expenses. This credit is calculated on Form 8863, and the amount from line 8 of that form is entered here. Line 30, reserved for future use, no entry is required here at this time. Line 31, this is the amount from Schedule 3, line 15, which could include other credits or payments, such as the Recovery Rebate Credit, or credits for sick and family leave. Line 32, add lines 27, 28, 29, and 31 to determine your total other payments and refundable credits. These amounts reduce your overall tax liability or increase your refund. Line 33, this is the total of your payments, which includes the sum of line 25D, tax withheld, line 26, estimated tax payments, and line 32, other refundable credits. These are the total payments that will be used to calculate whether you owe additional taxes or are due a refund. Line 34, this is where you calculate your overpayment. If your total payments from line 33 are greater than your total tax from line 24, you'll subtract line 24 from line 33. The result is the amount you overpaid, which will either be refunded to you or applied to your next year's taxes. Line 35A, this is the amount of your overpayment from line 34 that you want refunded to you. If you're choosing to have your refund deposited directly into your bank account, check the box to indicate that you have attached Form 8888, which is used to split your refund into multiple accounts or to apply it in other ways. If you're requesting a direct deposit, fill out the following fields. Line 35B, routing number. This is your bank's routing number, typically 9 digits. Line 35C, account type. Indicate whether the account is a checking or savings account. Line 35D, account number, the account number where you want your refund deposited. Line 36, this is the amount of your overpayment from line 34 that you want applied to your 2025 estimated tax. If you want to apply all or part of your refund to next year's estimated tax payments, enter the amount here. This will reduce what you owe in estimated taxes for the following year. Line 37, this is the amount you owe to the IRS. If your total tax liability from line 24 is greater than your total payments from line 33, subtract line 33 from line 24. The result is the amount you owe. Line 38, this is where you may enter any estimated tax penalty. If you didn't pay enough through withholding or estimated tax payments and you owe a significant amount of tax, the IRS may charge you a penalty. This line will only apply if the IRS determines you're subject to a penalty, and you'll find details on how to calculate it in the instructions or through an online tool. The third-party designee section on IRS Form 1040 allows you to authorize another person to discuss your tax return with the IRS. This section works as follows. Do you want to allow another person to discuss this return with the IRS? Yes. If you want to allow another person to discuss your return with the IRS, tick yes and fill out the following fields. No. If you do not want to allow another person to discuss your return with the IRS, tick no. Designee's name. If you ticked yes, enter the full name of the person you are designating as your third-party designee. This is the person who will be able to communicate with the IRS on your behalf. Phone number. Provide the phone number where the IRS can contact your designee. This ensures that the IRS can contact them if needed. Personal identification number, PIN. Your nominee will need to create a 5-digit PIN that they will use to verify their identity when discussing your tax return with the IRS. This PIN is unique to them, so make sure they choose a PIN they can remember. This PIN is for this purpose only and cannot be shared with anyone else. The Sign Here section is the final part of your IRS Form 1040 where you officially declare that the information you've provided on your tax return is true, correct, and complete. Here's what each line means. Your signature, you, as the taxpayer, must sign here to declare that the information you've provided is accurate. Date. The date you sign your tax return. Your occupation. List your job or occupation. It's usually the type of work you do, e.g., teacher, engineer, nurse, etc. Identity protection PIN. If the IRS has sent you an identity protection PIN, IP PIN, to prevent identity theft, enter that PIN here. This is a 6-digit number that helps the IRS confirm your identity when filing taxes. Spouse's signature. If filing jointly, if you are filing a joint return, your spouse must sign here as well. Date. Your spouse signs and dates the return. Spouse's occupation. Similar to your occupation, your spouse should list their job or occupation. Spouse's identity protection PIN. If your spouse received an identity protection PIN from the IRS, they should enter it here. Additional contact information. Phone number. Provide your phone number and your spouse's phone number, if applicable, in case the IRS needs to contact you about your return. Email address. You may also include your email address here. The IRS may use this to contact you if there are questions about your return or for other correspondence. The Paid Preparer Use Only section of the IRS Form 1040 is for tax professionals who prepare your return for you. If you hired a tax preparer, this section provides space for them to fill in their information. Here's a breakdown of what each part means. Preparer's name. This is where the name of the paid preparer, the tax professional who worked on your return, goes. Preparer's signature. The tax preparer must sign the form to certify that they prepared your return. Date. The date the preparer signs the return. PTIN, Preparer Tax Identification Number. The preparer must enter their PTIN, which is a unique number assigned to tax preparers by the IRS. It's required for anyone who prepares taxes for compensation. Check if self-employed. If the preparer is self-employed, i.e., they work independently and aren't part of a larger firm, they will check this box. Firm's name. If the preparer works for a firm, the name of the firm or company they work for is entered here. Phone number. The preparer or the preparer's firm's phone number where the IRS can reach them if needed. Firm's address. The address of the preparer's firm or the preparer's office. Firm's EIN, Employer Identification Number. If the preparer works for a firm, the Employer Identification Number, EIN, of the firm is listed here. This number is used to identify the business for tax purposes. If you worked with a tax professional to complete your return, they will handle filling out this section. If you're filing your return yourself, you can ignore it. Let me know if you have any questions or need clarification on this part. That's all for today's video. I hope you found the information helpful. We'll meet again soon with another video, so make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated. Have a great day ahead, and see you next time.